All right. Good morning. It's Saturday morning here. We're going to try something different this Saturday and take a spin down the advocacy drive, if you will. So joining me is Brendan Mckay. Brendan's you and I have done this a few times.
We have.
It's been a while.
But yeah, man, always appreciate you having me on, and I think every audience is a little better off for having a little advocacy in their lives every once in a while. You drag them in with what sells, and then you teach them a few things that are good for them. So I appreciate it.
Well, let's do this, Brendan, because I want to get into some of the kind of updates from DC as it is. But
yeah,
for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you wear multiple hats, right? You're a business owner and you're a major advocate for our industry.
Yeah, mortgage broker, co-founder of an advocacy group. Some people would say greatest father in the universe as well. So it's
I've heard that
times over here. My name's Brendan Mckay. I am a mortgage broker. I've owned Mckay Mortgage coming up on 8 years for Mckay Mortgage. I've been in the mortgage industry for 20 years, all of it on the wholesale side of things, operations or originating one way or the other. And 3 years ago, I co-founded the Broker Action Coalition along with Katie Sweeney. At the time, we were a part of the leadership team at AIM, Association of Independent Mortgage Experts. In the beginning of last year, we kind of AIM and the back split off, and AIM focuses on just continuing to develop the amazing community of mortgage brokers that they're helping, and we focus exclusively on advocacy. And it's been awesome. It comes from a place of I was deeply impacted personally by the fallout of 2008 and the housing recession. I was only 25 years old, so I did not have enough to lose a lot. But it had a huge impact on my life, and in a negative way for a couple of years. Managed to bounce back and get Mckay Mortgage in a really good spot. And I'm extremely passionate about making sure that mortgage brokers are never in the same situation they were again. And that is the back's underlying mission. We're going to talk about some specific stuff that we're doing, but that is the goal, to get mortgage brokers a seat at the table in Washington, D.C. and every state house in the country.
I love it. And for full disclosure for the audience, I'm part of the back board as an advisor, and proud to be part of it as well.
Dude, hell yeah, man. And we have an amazing board, which Brian is a part of. And whenever I have, either credit reporting or secondary issues, capital market stuff, he is getting those questions so that we can speak as intelligently as possible, and we're communicating with congressional offices and stuff like that. So, we deeply appreciate your involvement and expertise.
So let's connect the dots real quick.
Yeah.
From 2008 to today. So I, like you, was directly and probably maybe more negatively impacted, I should say, by the housing recession and the financial crisis, the mortgage meltdown, as we were calling it back then.
Yep.
And I was on the TPO side back then, buying loans from third-party originators, including brokers. And so when you say, the current state of the back really was born out of what happened back in that financial crisis, right? And I'll let you say it, but essentially the industry pointed a finger at a cohort, and a couple cohorts, but one cohort in general, or maybe more specifically, I think took the brunt of it.
They did, absolutely. And I was in the industry back then. I was not there though, although I have spoken to a lot of people that were. And here's my best understanding of what happened and how it happened. At the time, mortgage brokers were about 70% of originations, so they were the dominant force in it. And when essentially the shit hit the fan and all of these things started falling apart, mortgage brokers absolutely took the blame. And in my opinion, an unfair portion of the blame. I think there's plenty of slices of blame pie to go around.
Yeah.
I think the ratings agencies got off a little bit late, in my personal opinion, but the mortgage brokers were shoved pie down their face, far more than they should have gotten, in my opinion. I think the reasons for that are twofold. One, there was a general narrative out there that mortgage brokers and their loans were riskier than other outlets. Had access to a data study that was done in 2006 that shows when you take product variability out of it, that's actually not the case. And the reason it's important to take product variability out of it is that subprime loans were significantly riskier, and brokers had a lot more access to those loans than banks and direct retail did. So you have to kind of take that out of it. And once you remove that unfair product variability, there's nothing inherently riskier about broker behavior than any other origination channel. And we have data currently that proves that holds true. But I think the real reason that they really got developed and that narrative was able to take hold is because they weren't there in the way that they should be in DC. And I've talked to a lot of brokers that were very involved, and they're like, no, man, like, you're wrong. We were there. And I'm like, let me ask you a question. Were you there when everything went bad, or were you there 2 years prior?
Right.
And that's the difference, right? Like, when you show up and the house is already on fire, you're going to be in a disadvantageous position, right? Like, you can't just be there when there's a problem. You need to be there always. DC is like every other industry, and one of the things that it runs on is relationships. And if you're showing up when everything's already burning down and everyone else is pointing their finger at you because they know no one else knows you, and you're like, no, this and that, like, you're off balance and you've already lost, right? So, like, we want to be there not only when there's problems, but every single day leading up to it, so that when there are problems, it's not our first time making those phone calls to the people having those important conversations. So that is the work that we've been doing to make sure it doesn't happen again. And you can look at it. If you look at funding from MBA, NAR, and ABA back in 2008 and compare it to NAM, amazing organization that still exists to this day. But look at the funding of those groups compared to NAM, and you have the answer right there. That's why they weren't there. It might not have been there, like flooding the Hill constantly and having mortgage brokers there all the time and stuff like that. They have the money, right? And DC also, it runs on relationships and money, just like every other business in this country. And we're still disadvantaged with money. We can do more with less, but we're going to need brokers to continue doing the work.
Yeah, which is a great segue into what's next for BAC, which is your fly-in event, the advocacy event that's coming up in a week away, a week and a half away.
2 weeks. Still good. Yeah. Don't say 1 week. It's 2 weeks. So yeah, April 8th through 10th. So I am fortunate. I live right on the border of DC and Maryland. So I block off 1 week a month to go down to the Hill to do congressional meetings. I usually do 3 or 4 days, and throughout the month, there's tons of other stuff I'm doing. But when I'm down there, we're talking about that we advocate for mortgage brokers, and mortgage brokers are 25% of the market and all this stuff. And we deserve a seat at the table. And once a year, it's important that we have as many mortgage brokers as humanly possible fly in to back up all the things that I'm saying, right? We'll do the work throughout the year, but it is important that we have a show of numbers at least once a year. And that's April 8th through 10th. We've got a half day of focus on Black homeownership, veteran homeownership, and state level advocacy, full day of all sorts of amazing training. I say that as someone that hates training. I'm a terrible student, but we're very purposeful about the content we put up there and the way that we explain things. It's interactive. We have some amazing list of speakers, some eye-grabbing ones that hopefully will be people that are interesting but aren't seen on the circuit all the time. Basically, kind of our intent with it. And then on the 10th, we flood the Hill. We already are setting up a ton of congressional meetings. We're going to have everyone split up into teams, of 4 to 5 to 6 or 7 other people, and they'll spend all day together, going from one meeting to another. And if that all sounds intimidating to you, do not worry. We are going to teach you everything that you need to know and need to say and not say. But also know that, like, 2 things. One, every single group is going to have someone leading it that's done this stuff before. Oftentimes a lobbyist or just a broker who's done it a lot. I'm going to be leading some groups. And if you're not comfortable piping up in it, you don't have to be. But know that, like, you are the subject matter expert in that meeting. The jobs of our elected officials is to, believe it or not, it might not seem like it if you watch too much cable news, but to listen to their constituents and act accordingly. And in those meetings, you're the constituent and you're the expert. And they don't know mortgages. They don't know what trigger leads are or why there's such a problem, but you do. And they want your opinion. So it's not like, I've never done this before. I don't even know what I should possibly say, but you actually do. You just don't know how appropriate your expertise and how important it already is. And yeah, if you've never done it, I highly encourage it. It's very rewarding. You are literally speaking truth to power. And this is democracy in action, the way that it should work. And I encourage everybody, if you've never done anything like it before, give it a shot and have a good time while you're at it.
Yeah, I love how you describe you don't have to feel like you know all the answers, because you already do. You just don't know the questions.
You do. And they are the ones with the questions, and we'll teach you how to frame it from their perspective, because your expertise as an originator is important, but you actually want to talk from the perspective of a consumer, because that's the person that you're talking to, the staffer or member of Congress. That's what they are at the end of the day. And that's also what they care about more. They're less interested in how trigger leads or whatever issue we're talking about impact our business, and more interested in how it impacts the home buying process, how their constituent becomes a homeowner, how they feel during that process. Is their data being sold without their permission? Yeah. So it's really just about tilting things a little bit that way. But it's honestly, it's hard to screw up as long as you're decently polite, and you can even dress more casually than people think you probably can. It is really cool though. And it still has all that mystique and importance and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, there's few more rewarding professional feelings you're ever going to get than going to your member of Congress's office, speaking to them about an issue and seeing them co-sign that legislation a week or two later. Right. And it'll happen. It happened a ton last year. It's going to happen even more this year. This legislation has a ton of momentum behind it. So it's a cool feeling. It's how I got hooked in the first place. Something similar.
So when we did this last, you and I, it was probably almost a year ago prior to the last fly-in, and I'd say the number one topic, and maybe it's the same this time around, but it was all about credit triggers, right?
Yep, and it is.
And for all kinds of different reasons, we ended up 2024 kind of sort of in the same spot, but so close, right?
So close. Yep.
Two questions. I'm assuming credit triggers are still a very high focal point of conversation, but what else is on the docket?
So what else is on the docket? So whether it's on the docket or not, it depends on whether it gets introduced before the fly-in or not. There's a bill that is going to be introduced by Congressman Gregory Meeks out of New York. And it will basically, if it passes, it would lead to FHA mortgage insurance behaving the same as conventional mortgage insurance when the loan is active, for lack of a better term, right? Right now, in the overwhelming majority of circumstances, FHA mortgage insurance is on there for life, right? So that doesn't make sense for just on the surface of it, right? Mortgage insurance is essentially foreclosure protection for the lender, right? And you have, so once the loan has enough equity where there is either no risk of foreclosure because somebody would just sell the house, or no risk of foreclosure loss because if something crazy happens and a loan with 30% equity forecloses, there's no actual financial loss. Why should you have to pay insurance for something where there's no risk of financial loss, right? And why it's especially important right now is because of the specific environment that we're in. We're in an environment where interest rates were significantly lower than where they are right now. And people have a ton of equity in their house because of how much values have gone up by. So you have people that have FHA mortgages from 2019, 2020, 2021 that have way more than 20% equity. They might be sitting on 50% equity. Yeah. And normally in a quote unquote normal market, they would simply refinance into a conventional loan, but that makes no damn sense, right? Because they get rid of mortgage insurance, but they take an interest rate from the 2s and put it into the 6s or 7s. And it makes no sense. So like a lot of stuff, it never made sense for FHA mortgage insurance to stay on forever. It just takes certain circumstances to put enough pressure on the issue for someone to do on it. And further, exasperating this problem, it's like, okay, well, but FHA, it's a program and it's relying on this mortgage insurance to fund itself and stuff. Yeah, but FHA is sitting on something like 700% more or 500% than they are mandated to sit on. I forget how many billions of dollars extra they have in reserves. It's like, you're not a private entity. Like, you need to give that money back to the American people, right? So like we always try to think about legislation that makes sense. And also, like, if it doesn't cost the government money, that's ideal. Yeah. But in this case, it does cost the government money, but it's money that they shouldn't really have in the first place. I'm using shortcut language for some of this stuff, but so it's good timing on all of it as well. So we expect to support that fully. And that's actually something that you could argue it's actually going to result in slightly less originations over, not in this market, but in future markets. But two things. One, like, that's a very difficult thing for consumers to organize and advocate for, right? It's just, it's always tough for consumers to advocate unless it impacts everyone or, right. And we think as good stewards of the industry and honest brokers, being like, when we're talking to Capitol Hill, we're not just talking about stuff that's only good for us. But this is something that would save a lot of Americans a ton of money. When, the economy, people, there's a lot of people that could use a couple hundred extra bucks a month right now.
Yeah.
So we think it's a big deal and a good thing that should be done.
Well, I love it. And it's way overdue. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
So as you know, I kind of straddle all channels of the industry, right?
Yeah.
Not just the wholesale broker channel, but also the IMB or independent mortgage banker channel, community banks, credit unions, et cetera. And so I think it's really cool.
We're your favorite, though. We know it's okay.
Yeah. At this point in time, at this moment in time, I would not disagree. Right this second. What I think is cool is that your event that's coming up is kind of right up against, or I would actually say it's congruent with the Mortgage Bankers Association and their advocacy event. And so, when you think about the impact of housing, the housing industry at large coming together to communicate to our legislators, it's going to be a very impactful week with both the BAC and MBA. And I think TMBA, Texas Mortgage Bankers, might be in town as well.
Awesome. And I think so too. Like, ideally, it would be like more of a conflict for a lot of people to have them at the same time. The number of people going to our event that would also want to go to the MBA event, there are some. You're probably one of them, but there's not a ton. And honestly, that's a larger problem. I think that, like, everyone that cares about advocacy should want to go to all of it. It's all applicable, right? Like, the number of things that the MBA advocates for, like, whatever their full agenda is, we're going to feel strongly about 80% of it. And the other 20%, we're like, yeah, good idea. It's just not like right in our wheelhouse, right? So, like, hopefully, eventually, it is more of a scheduling problem for people that we do have them overlapping in the sense that we do. But to your point, when you think about it from the Hill's perspective and staffers' perspective, and just basic marketing principles of the number of times it takes for somebody to hear something before they act on it, the same principles apply, right? And, like, they're going to be hearing the same message on trigger leads in particular, and any other issues we're also advocating for. And it's like, oh, geez, like, man, this is really a hot button topic. All I'm doing is hearing about it all week long. And then, like, furthermore, if you think about, like, Capitol Hill and, like, all the staffers and lobbyists and stuff as a community, like, they all network and have happy hours and this and that and talk about their days like all normal people do and stuff. For the first time I went down, I'm like, you guys, you just talk about your day and your family. It's just like everyone else does. Like, I don't know why you, like, had funny hats or whatever. Like, it's true. And like, so the more that we're flooding that sphere with this information, the more buzz and talk about it there is this week that extends beyond just those actual meetings. So absolutely, I think it's definitely true. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And there's reasons why all these events, I want as big as possible.
Right.
And, like, the NAM one's coming up next week. I'm going to go to as much of the NAM stuff as I can because it's important. And it's, an easy bus and metro ride for me too. That doesn't,
So last couple questions, thoughts, and we can
Yeah.
put a bow on it so you can get back to your weekend, being the super father that you are. uh, so uh, just talk to me about this whole, all the stuff that we outside of mortgage, like as a normal consumer, all we see right now out of DC is all the Doge news. How is this Doge effect impacting what you all do on a daily basis within the back?
Well, it's impacting what Brendan does at Mckay Mortgage deeply. The local economy is has instability in a way it hasn't in a long time with job loss and stuff. How it's impacting stuff we do at the back on the day-to-day legislative stuff and bills, less than you would think.
Okay.
Like when we're having meetings talking about trigger lead legislation, it comes up, but it's just not as relevant to the passing of legislation. More as gossip and scuttlebutt and things like that. And I'll tell you that most of the people we're talking to know as much / as little as everyone else does. So that's the general sentiment on it, and it impacts the back. And I do a lot of speaking on it. Is I try very hard to stay in our lane, right? Our lane is mortgages and housing. So when it comes to cuts and changes specific to the CFPB, FHFA, and FHA, it's more appropriate for us to talk about. And it's hard because we just hear things happen, but there's not really any word communication. We're
Right.
doing this because of X, Y, and Z, right? Like, so, and we see the cuts and we see where the cuts are happening, but we don't know the plan or the logic behind it. And we can still form opinions and make statements based on, but sure would be helpful if we knew not just what they were doing, but why they were doing it, because
Right.
then we could know, okay, well, so like a lot of it's left to assumptions. So let's start with the CFPB. Like, okay, the CFPB is getting really disrupted and they're making cuts here and there. But there's no plan put up there. So people are left to kind of figure out the plan on their own. And they're like, okay, well, the states are just going to do it. And I'm like, well, that would be a disaster in my opinion. Like the states aren't even approving licenses in time right now. You want them to start enforcement? Where's that money going to come from? Are you ready for your state taxes to go up or it just not happen at all? So that's where I think that we have a responsibility as an industry leader to speak on it, to speak very carefully and not let whatever our personal political biases, either one way or the other, whether it's inclination to support it because we support this administration or not because we don't, but to think pragmatically and logically and not even necessarily make hard definitive statements, but putting the perspective out there of potential problems and making everyone else more aware about it. Because with all of this stuff, man, words matter.
Yeah.
And as a kid, we were like, sticks and stones break my bones, words can never hurt me. Words matter, man. Words matter a lot in DC, and they matter in the rest of the world because words lead to action. So I think that's where our responsibility to just share our perspective and put that out there, and maybe more people feel the same, or maybe somebody will respond and be like, yeah, but yada yada, and things we didn't think about, and intelligent conversation happens from there.
Well, I appreciate that perspective immensely. Brendan, I love the work you're doing. The entire team is really carrying the ball for this segment of the industry, and frankly representing positively the entire industry. And so thank you for sharing the update this morning, and looking forward to getting the reviews on the event post conference.
Dude, hell yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on. Trigger lead bill, it's going to get done this Congress. I'm never putting percentages on anything happening again, but a lot of reasons to be optimistic. And yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And when I stick my foot in my mouth, give me the benefit of the doubt. So I do let it rip sometimes, but yeah, man.
Keep on rocking, buddy.
Dude, hell yeah, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, man.